We begin with breaking news from the Northwest Territories, where the government has declared a territorial state of emergency because of the unprecedented wildfires.
This decision allows our government to require and deploy the necessary resources to support the management of this unprecedented fire season and protect the health and safety of Northwest Territories residents.
More than 230 wildfires are burning across the Northwest Territories right now. The government says that the communities of Fort Smith and Hay River remain at risk due to the fires in the South Slave region. Yellowknife is also at risk due to a wildfire approaching the capital from the west. Thousands of residents have fled. Many of those forced out by flames have taken refuge in Alberta. Yellowknife's mayor says her community is on alert.
We're also setting up sprinklers around the community, and of course the territorial government's working on the actual fighting of the fire, but here in Yellowknife we're focused on some of those precautionary measures and mitigation measures.
The day before at 3 o'clock in the afternoon it was darker than midnight. In the community it was really kind of scary, and everywhere you looked there was a red ring right around the whole town. So it was kind of freaky.
Many of the highways have been closed, and the territory is mounting what officials are calling the largest airlift in its history. Canadian Forces personnel are helping firefighters leave for safety. So far this season, wildfires have scorched more than 20,000 square kilometers, an area nearly 4 times the size of the province of Prince Edward Island. Hot, dry conditions not letting up across British Columbia, and that, of course, is fueling wildfires. 2 fires burning for weeks at Cathedral Provincial Park south of Kelowna roared to life. The fires triggered an evacuation alert for the park and surrounding areas. Both fires were sparked by lightning last month. 370 wildfires are burning across the province. Environment Canada is warning the situation could intensify in the coming days.
With that cold front coming through and the dry lightning potential, that's going to make things quite challenging, especially throw in those wind shifts and the gusty winds. It's not looking like a good situation come Thursday, Friday.
The Kamloops area is at especially high risk for the potential of new fires. BC is in the midst of its worst wildfire season. About 16,000 square kilometers of land have already burned. All right, let's return now to the wildfires burning in the Northwest Territories. Residents are being flown out to places like Edmonton, Fort McMurray, and Calgary. And that is where we find CTV's Austin Lee this morning. Austin, good morning to you. Tell us about the effort to get people out and how they are finding some refuge there in Calgary.
Well, good morning, Marcia. It's obviously a very concerning situation given the fact that we're talking about transporting some long-term care residents to places like Calgary from the Northwest Territories. That's about 1,700 kilometers from Calgary to Yellowknife, for example. So obviously quite a distance. But when you're talking about long-term care residents, which will eventually be making their way to this city, obviously trying to find capacity becomes quite a challenge. And so, as you mentioned, Edmonton, Fort McMurray, Calgary, all will serve as places of refuge for those long-term care residents. Also, according to the Territory's health minister, they'll be trying to find capacity elsewhere in the Northwest Territories that have not been affected by these wildfires. But according to the government's website, right now, there are more than 235 wildfires that are currently burning in the territory. So that may pose some challenges. As for how many people will be transported here to Calgary or where they will be transported to exactly, that remains unclear right now. Obviously, it's a situation that officials will continue to monitor closely, and hopefully the rain that's in the forecast into tonight and then going into tomorrow as well will help to provide some relief. But right now, again, a lot of questions about how many people will make that roughly 1,500 to 1,700 kilometer trip from the Northwest Territories here to Calgary.
Right, where Calgary is opening its doors. In Austin, any sense of how long people can stay there once they arrive?
Right now, Marcia, again, more questions than answers. This was just something that was brought up by the territory's health minister just yesterday, and so we're still trying to pin down the exact details of where or when individuals will arrive. I would imagine that a city the size of Calgary will have some locations that do have some open spaces for these individuals that are seeking refuge. We know that some individuals were also airlifted to places like Grand Prairie just recently. The military airlifting them there. There's a music festival going on in that community, and so hotel capacity is relatively scarce, and people that had been transported to Grand Prairie were then later moved to places like St. Albert. So fortunately, there are some contingency plans in place, and people will be able to move around to community centers, hotels, that sort of thing. But obviously, a tough situation for people that have to not only leave their home community, but also travel quite a long distance to find refuge.
Austin Lee for us in Calgary. Austin, thank you for all of that.